Hello everybody. This is a very important concept which is called middlewares. And middlewares are, you could think of them as hooks that get executed before you reach the route. So you can have a specific set of hooks. Very popular hooks are hooks related to authentication. So basically when a request comes in, you want to make sure, if it's a protected route, you want to make sure that it goes through this middleware, which checks to see if the user has the required credentials and presented the required tokens. If yes, then you take it, you tell it to go to the next middleware, and ultimately, if everything is good, it will go to the route, which is actually a middleware. So an route itself is a middleware, right? And then it executes the route. So basically, these are middlewares that execute before the route itself. You can also have middlewares that execute after the route, right? But what we're looking at right now are middlewares that execute before the route and are very easy to implement. You can have middlewares that are executed with every single route, and these are called global middlewares. So basically, if you go to Express and you look at the guide, you see here writing middleware, and it's very straightforward. They tell you that to write a middleware that will execute, and we had a middleware that we included in our app. To add the middleware, all you have to do is just app use, and you provide the middleware. And the middleware is a function. The function has three parameters: request, response, and then next. So basically, you get access to the request, you get access to actually the response, and you get access to a method called next. If everything is good, so basically from the request, you can get the request parameters and so on, and you can do your checks, and if everything is good, then you call the next function. So basically, next is a function. If there is a problem, you can return back the response telling the user that there is a problem, right? And if there is a problem and the app returns without calling, or this function returns without calling next, then what's going to happen is that it will not go and complete the request. The request will end by sending a result, okay? So let's see, how do we write one? So let's write one of a simple middleware. I'll call it also, this is a global middleware, so I'll do it like this. I'll say constant, I'll write a function. I'll call it my first middleware, right? First middleware, and here it is, and it's equal to, and it has two parameters: request, response, and next. And basically, we just used an arrow function here. So here it is, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say console log, indicating that I'm in that middleware, okay? So here we are, console log, and it's going to say just I am inside the middleware. And then make sure that you call the next function. So next function says that execute the next, whatever is next in the middleware pipeline, okay? Now, if we want to register it if we want to register this to execute with every single function, right? Every single route call, make it a global middleware so that every request will pass by this. You just use the app.use, and then you just pass it my first middleware, and basically every single request is going to pass by this one. So now let's go back here, make a request, refresh, and you can see here it's printing my first middleware. Refresh, and it's calling my first middleware. You can register as many middlewares as you want, so we can also have another one. And this is the second middleware. Here it is. This second middleware. Here's the second middleware. So basically I can just register that one also by just indicating that I want to add my second middleware to the pipeline. And then what's going to happen is that when you run, you see here you're getting my first and then my second, because both of them get executed. That's how you register these are global middlewares, right? Global, right? Can you register the middleware more than once? Yeah, you can. You just add it as a function again, and it's a pipeline. So basically you're adding it to the pipeline. Now, what if you want to, let's say I'm going to remove these global middlewares. I don't need them now. Now, I won't like to execute the middleware when you are running this route only. So you want to do a protected route, for example. So what you do is you just, before the route function, you just add your middleware. My first middleware, boom. And then what's going to happen is that you are telling it that this is the route, execute this middleware, and then after that, if it calls next, then execute the next middleware, which is this one. Okay. Now, can I add a middleware after that? I think I can. So basically, I could do my second middleware. But you have to be a little bit careful, because what we're doing here is that you're sending a request. So let's not worry about calling a middleware after the route. We'll talk about this later. But here is a middleware that's executed before the route. So basically, if we go here, save, and then we go here, and then we refresh, you see here, my first middleware gets executed. What if you have more than one middleware you want to execute? Just add them. So basically, my second middleware, here it is. Okay. Now when you run this route, refresh, you'll see that it executes this one and this one. Now, another thing to keep in mind, let's say here, what you could do is, how could you just stop the process from moving forward? Is just not by calling, let's say we have let error equal true. So that if there is an error, for example, just to emulate an error, if there is an error, okay, if we have an error, and then else. All right, so if we have an error, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this function, right? So if there is an error, let's call it here. Here we are. So basically, if there is an error, what I'm going to do is I'm just saying response.send, and I want to send, let's say, error, for example, just for the time being. Okay, so I'm going to send an error. And that's it. So basically, if there is an error, I'm just going to send an error. Otherwise, I'll go to the next. Okay, so now let's refresh. Now notice that we made error equal to true. This means there is an error. So, okay, we run it, and you see you're getting error. So it doesn't execute forward. Because you see here, this middleware has my first and my second. It never executed my second because we never called next because there is an error. Okay. Now, be careful because some users don't have, some developers will not have the if-else statement. What they will do is that, okay, I will do it like this, and I will not have an else statement. I'll just have next. This means that the code will run as follows. The expectation is that first there is the middleware, there is an error, I send back a response, and that ends up everything, and then I go to next if there is no error, right? The problem is that this function will not end by just sending sending back a response. It will still execute next now. See, refresh, and it crashes because you see here it calls my first and then my second, and then it crashes because you already sent a response back. Now, what you can do is you can return here. Some developers, instead of having the else if, they will have a return here. So that's to guarantee that it will not go forward. Okay, so now we refresh, and here we are. Okay, please let me know if you have any questions.